Welcome back to the deep dive. Ever find yourself wondering what's actually going on inside an AI when it learns something? It's a big question, right? Is it just memorizing everything like some super database, or is there maybe something more like understanding happening? Today, that's exactly what we're diving into. This really interesting difference between a language model just memorizing stuff and its ability to generalize, to kind of grasp the bigger picture. And we're doing it by looking at a key new research paper.
That's right. We're digging into a paper called How Much Do Language Models Memorize?
Yeah.
It's got quite a list of authors. John X. Morris, Chao Siddhawaran, Chuan Guan, Noreen Koplikin, G. Edward Su, Alexander M. Rush, Kamlika Chaudhuri, and Saeed Malujifar. Came out end of May 2025, quick revision early June. And yeah, our mission today is basically to get a handle on how much these models really remember, how that connects to their size, their capacity, and this concept they call grokking.
Okay, let's get into it. When we
Yeah.
talk about AI learning, what are these researchers actually digging into? Is it just remembering every single thing it saw during training?
Well, that's the core problem they wanted to solve. You see, previous work kind of struggled to pull apart pure memorization, like remembering specific facts it was trained on, from generalization understanding the underlying rules or patterns. So what these authors did was propose a formal way to separate them. They talk about unintended memorization, which is basically information the model holds specifically about its training data. Think of it like rote recall.
Okay, just spitting back facts it saw.
Exactly. And then there's generalization. That's the information the model has about the, let's say, the true process that generates the data. It's more like understanding the rules of grammar, not just memorizing sentences.
Hmm.
And the real breakthrough, the clever part, is their new method to actually estimate how much a model knows about any single data point. This lets them disentangle the two, memorization versus generalization. It's pretty neat.
Right, so they can tell if it just memorized cat sat on mat versus understanding subject verb object. How do they measure that knowing, or as you said, its capacity? Is there like a number?
Yes, there is. And it's quite specific. To figure out the model's total capacity, what they did was set things up to completely shut down generalization. By doing that, they could measure what they call total memorization. And that number becomes their direct estimate of the model's information capacity, how much it can hold. And get this, their measurements suggest that for GPT-style models, the capacity is around 3.6 bits per parameter.
Wow, 3.6 bits per parameter. That actually gives you a concrete number. It feels really efficient, doesn't it? A tangible measure of information density.
It really does. Instead of just saying big model, we have a number.
Hmm.
But okay, here's where it gets, I think, really fascinating. They talk about grokking. What is that exactly? How does it fit in with memory and this capacity limit?
Yeah, I saw that term. Grokking sounds like.
Yeah, it does a bit. It comes from Heinlein. But what they observed in training is this. Models basically just memorize training examples until they hit that capacity limit, that 3.6 bits per parameter ceiling, more or less. And then, crucially, right at that point, grokking starts. And what happens is the unintended memorization, the rote stuff, actually starts to decrease.
It decreases, so it starts forgetting the specifics.
Sort of. As the memorization goes down, the model starts to generalize better. It's like it shifts strategy. It stops trying to cram in every detail and starts figuring out the underlying patterns instead.
Okay, so it hits a wall capacity-wise, and then something clicks, and it shifts from just remembering to understanding the rules.
That's the idea. It's a really profound observation. It suggests a shift from rote learning towards something more like genuine pattern extraction or understanding.
So is there theory on why? Why does hitting the capacity limit trigger this shift? And how do they even spot this? It sounds like something happening deep inside the model.
Yeah, the why is still a huge area of research. Is it about optimization, energy efficiency, finding a more compact representation? We don't fully know yet, but as for how they saw it, well, the scale of their work was pretty massive. They didn't just train one model. They trained hundreds of these transformer language models ranging from like 500,000 parameters, which is relatively small these days, all the way up to 1.5 billion parameters.
Hundreds. Okay, that makes sense. You'd start seeing patterns emerge.
Exactly. All that training allowed them to consistently observe this grokking phenomenon across different sizes and setups, and it let them develop these scaling laws.
Scaling laws, like rules for how they behave as they get bigger.
Pretty much. Formulas that things like model size, the amount of training data, and this capacity measure to how well the model performs, and specifically, how likely it is to have memorized certain inputs. This ties into something called membership inference, which is basically trying to figure out if a specific piece of data, maybe your data, was in the training set. So these findings have, real implications for privacy and understanding what the model actually saw.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. So pulling it all together, what does this mean for, us? For anyone using these AI tools or just curious about how they tick, is it just academic?
No, definitely not just academic. I mean, this gives us a much clearer, more quantified picture of how these models learn. It's not just magic. There's this interplay between storing specifics and finding patterns.
Yeah.
Knowing about this capacity limit, this 3.6 bits per parameter figure, and seeing the shift point, this grokking.
Hmm.
It helps understand the limits of current models, right?
Mm.
And their efficiencies. It can really influence how we build the next generation of AI.
So the big takeaway seems to be that a model's knowledge isn't just one giant pile of data. It's this dynamic process, memorizing specifics up to a point, and then maybe shifting to generalizing, all within a measurable limit.
Precisely. That 3.6 bits per parameter gives us a benchmark, and the whole grokking phenomenon gives us insight into that learning process, that transition point. It's a fascinating look under the hood.
Yeah, it really is. And it leaves you wondering, doesn't it? If researchers can now actually measure this capacity and see the shift from just memorizing to generalizing, what could that mean for designing future AI? Could we use that knowledge to build models that are, I don't know, more efficient, maybe more targeted in how they learn, or perhaps even more genuinely understanding? Definitely something to think about.